Throughout time, people across the world told each other tales of how they came to be, of heroes and monsters, romance and tragedy, death and rebirth. Mythology helped shape the ancient world, explaining the unexplainable. This is Mythology Unleashed. In a time of mist and magic, filled with an assortment of characters and creatures beyond one's wildest fantasies, few names ever rang with the power of that of Morgan le Fay. Recounted in the legends of King Arthur, Morgan le Fay is an enigmatic figure with nigh unmatched magical prowess, breathtaking beauty, and an enchanting yet chilling aura about her. As with much of Arthurian legend, Morgan le Fay's origins are shrouded in mystery, and her roles in folklore range from benevolent to pure evil to ominously ambiguous. For centuries, she was considered a real woman who lived in various different parts of Britain, believed to be a healer, and a mysterious woman with many spiritual talents. Though much like Arthur, it is unknown if she was truly a historical person, or just a figure of myth. In legend, she has been portrayed as a beautiful enchantress, a menacing sorceress, a wicked crone, a mystical fae, and even a goddess. But the one unifying trait between all incarnations is her unmistakable power, always influencing the greater stories of Arthurian legend. Le Fay's earliest mention is believed to be from Geoffrey of Monmouth's Verda Merlini, or The Life of Merlin, written in the mid-12th century. Geoffrey describes Le Fay as an ethereal being, akin to a goddess or a fairy, the eldest and most beautiful of 9 mystical sisters. Here she is the ruler of the mystical Isle of Avalon, and a powerful wielder of magic, capable of flight and shape-shifting, and is unmatched in her abilities as a healer. Following the Battle of Camlan, a mortally wounded Arthur is brought to her, and she sends him to Avalon so that he may be healed of his wounds. She was later featured as King Arthur's sister in Chrétien de Troyes' Eric and Enid, published circa 1165, and further described as a giver of healing ointments, and portrayed more as a prototypical enchantress with anti-heroine qualities. In this iteration, Morgan was sent to a Christian nunnery at a young age, where she began to develop magical powers that were subsequently extended with the help of Merlin. These early writings depict Morgan in a more positive light, as a benevolent-leaning, if not mysterious figure, who uses her powers to help others. But as time would go on, perhaps as a result of early Christian superstitions surrounding the idea of a powerful, healing woman not associated with the church, her portrayals would begin to take on a much darker tone. In the Vulgate cycle and post-Vulgate cycle of the 13th century, Morgan le Fay is shown as being much more human rather than a pseudo-goddess. But her moral alignment was shifty even within the context of individual stories. There were times she would be seen as particularly helpful and even nurturing towards other characters, while other times she would be particularly malicious, performing evil acts with little to no explanation. She was married to Urien Reged, and also Queen Guinevere's lady-in-waiting. Le Fay fell in love with Guinevere's nephew, Guiomar, but the romance came to an end at Guinevere's hand. In retaliation, Morgan betrayed the Queen's affair with Lancelot to King Arthur, whom she had become infatuated with herself, though he consistently refused her attentions, having been imprisoned by her on multiple occasions. It is possible that parts of her story within the Vulgate cycle and post-Vulgate cycle were inspired by Greek mythology, particularly the motifs of Medea, who killed her rival for Jason's affection, and Deianira, who poisoned Hercules with a tunic. In Sir Thomas Malory's Le Morte d'Arthur of the 15th century, le Fay's moral ambiguity is thrown asunder, and she is written as a perpetual thorn in Arthur's side, constantly plotting his downfall. When Uther Pendragon married Igraine, Morgan was the youngest of her 3 daughters from her previous marriage to Gorlois, Duke of Cornwall, who had been slain by Uther's army just as he forced himself upon her at Tintagel Castle, leading to the birth of Arthur. Morgan was then sent to a nunnery where, like in previous versions, she is schooled in the arts of sorcery by Merlin. As in the Vulgate cycles, le Fay is married to Urien, and she has a son with him, named Uwaine. King Arthur and Morgan le Fay first came face to face when he sent for Igraine to verify his parentage. But at that stage, there were no indications of animosity between Morgan and Arthur. But at the burial of Lot and the 11 Kings in Book 2, Merlin told Arthur of Excalibur's scabbard, and its ability to protect the wielder from harm. Arthur passed the scabbard to Morgan le Fay for safekeeping, but she loved another knight more than she did her husband, so she secretly had made a replica of the scabbard and gave the real one to her lover, Sir Accolon of Gaul, in order to protect him. She then orchestrated a duel to the death between Arthur and Accolon, and were it not for the intervention of Nimue, the Lady of the Lake, Arthur would have fallen at Accolon's hand. Meanwhile, le Fay, who was certain of Accolon's victory over Arthur, attempted to kill her husband, but she was thwarted by her son Uwaine. She rode to the nunnery, where Arthur was recovering from his wounds, and tried to steal the real Excalibur and scabbard while he slept. But she was only able to take the scabbard, because the sword was in his hand. When Arthur awoke, he set off in pursuit of Morgan, but she cast the scabbard into a deep lake. She then used her shape-shifting powers to disguise herself and her entourage as standing stones to escape further pursuit. For the remainder of the main plot, Morgan le Fay practically vanishes, her role and influence steadily decreasing, before returning at the end of Arthur's life in the mortal world, bringing him to Avalon, where he may heal from his wounds, and perhaps one day return. In the 20th and 21st centuries, Morgan le Fay's character and role in fiction and fantasy have evolved along with what would go on to become staples of modern Arthurian lore. In many modern romances, she is cemented as the elder half-sister of King Arthur, and the primary rival of Merlin, capable of untold magical ability. Perhaps the biggest addition to her character is her near-consistent portrayal as the mother of Mordred, a connection that is noticeably absent from many, if not all, of the manuscripts. But as Mordred has been said in modern lore to have been conceived by Morgan le Fay by tricking Arthur into sleeping with her, and would one day go on to mortally wound Arthur at the Battle of Camlan, Morgan has been regularly seen as a villainous figure, bringing about the eventual fall of Arthur and of Camelot. But as with the age-old writings, Morgan is not always depicted as either wholly good or evil, as modern authors have embraced the consistent inconsistency of le Fay, allowing her to appear in a myriad of roles: a benevolent healer, an ethereal goddess, an evil sorceress, a cunning trickster, a mysterious anti-heroine, and the list goes on. No matter if she truly was a real person who had been mythologized beyond recognition, or only a legend written about in manuscripts, she is undoubtedly one of the most famous women of medieval European tradition. To this day, Morgan le Fay remains a paragon and embodiment of mysticism, enchantment, and archaic magic.